Hey everybody, this is Chris with Phone Arena, and today we'll be talking about all the awesome Chinese phones. The thing to remember about Chinese phones is that they offer...
Wait. Are we gonna talk about how awesome Chinese phones are?
Yeah?
Well, my name is Victor, and I don't agree. I think that Chinese phones still have a way to go, and there are much better brands out there, brands that you've actually heard of, that can offer great performance.
So you're trying to tell me that they didn't win the race to the bottom? I mean, you can buy a $130 worth of smartphone that has a quad-core processor, 720p display, and so on and so forth.
So you can buy such an affordable smartphone, but it's not any good. It lags, it doesn't have a great camera.
It doesn't lag. I mean, it lags if you're using a Snapdragon 800, but it doesn't lag if you want to be
Okay guys, so we have a couple of smartphones by Chinese smartphone makers. These ones are by Lenovo, and we'll take a look at them and explore all the pros and cons, and we'll try to tell you, are they worth buying? Or should you look at well-known brands? So let's go. Okay guys, so what are Chinese smartphones? Well, the overwhelming majority of Chinese smartphones are actually extremely affordable devices. They're very cheap. You can find some for even less than $100. And of course you can't expect much of a quality at that price point, do you?
Well, sure, but there are still phones that are really cheap, like the Xiaomi Red Rice, and there are even more expensive phones that really go into the premium category. So if you think about Oppo and Vivo, and if you look at the K series of Lenovo, you can actually see that it's not all about cheap smartphones, and there's actually some pretty nice products out there.
Oh, that's true, but let's keep in mind that we basically have two tiers of Chinese smartphones. The more premium ones, like the ones that Chris mentioned, like Oppo and Vivo, and less premium ones, let's call them the more affordable smartphones from China. These are smartphones from white box makers, brands that you have never heard of, like THL or Xiaokai or anything like that. Well, crazy names.
Actually, if you think about it, there is even a third tier, which is really no brand names, which means that you have phones that are called N9000 and W500, which are the phones that we really don't suggest you buy.
But what do you think about this second brand? Are they worth buying?
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends. You really should be reviewing those phones before you actually commit to buying them, but you don't really have to, you shouldn't try to judge them by their size, because these manufacturers may be small indeed, but that doesn't mean that their phones are no good.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep in mind that some Chinese smartphones are good despite the fact that they don't come from a well-established brand. But in the Western world, you also have phones like the Nexus 5 that are a great deal, a lot of bang for the buck, and you also have the Motorola Moto G, so why not choose smartphones from brands that you've actually heard of?
Well, actually, if you think about it, that's a pretty hard argument to argue against, because these are really good devices that you just mentioned. But if you think about it again, then you realize these are just two devices, and there's a world of billions of people out there, so you can't really expect everyone to pick a Nexus 5. And moreover, the Nexus 5 is not available everywhere, and neither is a Moto G.
Absolutely. So one thing to keep in mind, folks, is if you live in a country like the United States where you have 2-year contracts, and you can get devices for very cheap, like the iPhone 5s that you can get for around $200, or let's just not keep it to Apple, like a Samsung Galaxy 4, HTC One, all great devices for just $200 subsidized. You should definitely pick them over a cheap smartphone from China. Simply because you have that subsidy, you pay that plan, and the cost of those devices is included. So if you get a cheap smartphone on a contract, you're actually losing money, so it makes no financial sense.
Yeah, but if you live outside of the United States, the point still stands that not everything is going to be sold through a subsidy by your carrier, so there's still good reason to pay attention to Chinese smartphones.
Absolutely.
Alright folks, let's talk connectivity. This is an issue for a lot of people who are trying to buy a Chinese smartphone, because these frequencies and network standards are really confusing for most people. There are a few key points that you need to keep in mind. For starters, China has its own standard for 3G connectivity, which is called TD-SCDMA, which means that it's basically the phones that run with this kind of network mode are not going to work pretty much anywhere else. But you need to remember that one carrier in China called China Unicom supports the LCDMA standard, which is much more popular, especially in Europe. So if you're looking to buy Chinese smartphone, you should be looking for LTE enabled smartphone.
Okay, folks, the most important thing to keep in mind if you live in the United States is that Chinese smartphones do not support 4G LTE connectivity. If you're using 4G LTE on Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, it won't work in the United States if you get a Chinese smartphones. Otherwise, as Chris said, most Chinese smartphones actually do support 3G bands. You just need to be a little careful when you pick them and make sure they support the exact same frequencies as your carrier. Okay folks, the last thing that you need to keep in mind is performance. Most Chinese smartphones are known to ship with a MediaTek system chip. This is a Chinese-made system chip that is found in most devices and allows to keep the price really bottom low. So we're speaking about sub $100 smartphones, but that is not where the real issue is. The real issue is with devices featuring 1080p Full HD displays. Now there is a place where the MediaTek chip just can't catch up and it lags. So if you're ordering a more high-end Chinese device, chances are that it might lag, and that's not a good feeling, is it?
No, definitely not. But if you think about it, MediaTek just came out with a new generation of chips which are more than capable of handling 1080p. Sure, you're not going to be experiencing blazing fast speeds like if you have a Qualcomm Snapdragon 800, but these are still plenty adequate if you think about the price. So the things that you need to keep in mind is, do not expect to get the same kind of bleeding edge performance out of a phone that costs under 200 bucks, sorry.
Okay folks, so that's pretty much a wrap up. We have the pros and the cons of Chinese smartphones and we want to know what you think about them. Would you buy a Chinese smartphone? Why or why not? Make sure to head to Phone Arena to see our more detailed coverage. And thank you for watching. This was Victor and
Chris.
Thanks for watching.